Your local election headquarters, KRQE News 13 presents the 2025 Albuquerque Mayoral Race Special.
Welcome to this KRQE 2025 Albuquerque Mayoral Race Special. I'm Dean Staley.
And I'm Jessica Gadathe. The race for Albuquerque Mayor includes a crowded field of 6 candidates. Over the next hour, we will introduce you to 3 of the candidates in the race who have experience in law enforcement, courtroom prosecution, and business development.
We interviewed all of the candidates on the same day using the same questions.
Those questions covered a wide range of topics, including one of voters' biggest concerns: how to fight crime here in the metro and improve the operation of Albuquerque's police department.
We also asked about homelessness and how to get thousands of unhoused people off of Albuquerque streets. And
how the candidates would spur economic development in our city of more than 500,000 people.
Some of these interviews were lightly edited for time, and the order in which you are seeing them was chosen at random.
Our first candidate is Darren White. White is an Army veteran, former Albuquerque police officer, former sheriff of Bernalillo County, and former head of the New Mexico Department of Public Safety. He was also a founder and co-owner of cannabis company Pure Life. The company was sold in 2021. Darren, we're going to start right off the bat. One of the top issues facing our city is crime. As we see crime nationally going down a little, Albuquerque still is above the national level. What would you do to lower crime in the city, and what would you change at APD?
First of all, you're right. I mean, the mayor likes to talk about that for the first time in 10 years, the crime is down. I have trouble with that because the data speaks otherwise. 10 years ago, 2014, there were 30 murders in Albuquerque. And in 2024, there were 106. And to use that as a comparison it's just not being honest with the voters. And I get it. Look, I mean, he's in a re-election for his life, but at least recognize that we are in a crime crisis, and we have been. And so one of the things that I would do is I would change the chief of police. He would leave if I were to win. He would retire the next day. But what I'd do is I'd hire an inspirational, a strong leader, but an inspirational leader. Somebody not only that the officers can be proud of, but that the public can be proud of as well. But most importantly, somebody who's willing to keep up with me when it comes to tackling the crime crisis that we're currently in, because we're at a tipping point. We are, families live in fear. Businesses are closing around us every single day over the weight of this problem. And so there's no time to wait. We have to tackle this day one, and I'm committed to doing that. One of the other things I would do is the bureaucracy in the police department is very top heavy. Chief Medina just a month or so ago said that his executive staff is 50 people. It wasn't too many years ago, it was only 15. And so let's get the bloated bureaucracy taken care of and move those positions out to patrol so that they're responding to crimes and fighting crime. Proactive policing is missing. I tell people all the time, Jessica, when was the last time you saw an Albuquerque police officer pulled somebody over for a traffic stop? And they all look at me and go, you're right, because it doesn't happen. That's such an important piece of a police officer's day. When you pull somebody over for a traffic stop, maybe that person doesn't have a driver's license and they're not really sure what their name is. Or there's something that you see in the car that says, wait, there's more going on here. That person has a warrant. Maybe that's the reason why they're not providing you with the proper identification. But that's old-fashioned proactive police work, and we don't do it anymore. And these damn traffic cameras, these speed cameras, that doesn't replace that. And so we got to get back to the days where we have as many boots on the ground, responding to calls for service. And most importantly, let them do the job that they were hired to do. This administration has said basically hands off. On many aspects, whether it's homelessness, misdemeanor offenses, we're not going to arrest people, we're not going to cooperate with the feds as it relates to sanctuary cities. And so I'm going to tell whoever's the chief of police and the officers, I encourage you to go out there and do your job. And one of the other parts of it I'm worried is that we've always had, the public has always had great respect for law enforcement. And I'm worried the problem is getting so bad. I'm hearing from people that confidence in the police department is starting to suffer. And so if you're a city that doesn't have confidence in your police department, you're in very, very big trouble. So change the culture. Go in and tell them, go do your job. If you ignore the small problems, the big problems become bigger. And that's exactly where Albuquerque is.
I want to be able to touch on all the different topics, but do you support city-sanctioned homeless camps?
No, they come down day one.
Where do those people go?
So, and I was going to say, the city of Albuquerque has invested tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars into the Gateway Center. And the Supreme Court ruled last year, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled last year, if you're a municipality dealing with a homeless problem, if you have adequate services and programs for the homeless, you can enforce the laws you have in the books as it relates to not camping on your streets, your sidewalks, and in your city parks. Those laws have been on the books in Albuquerque for decades, since I first came here. But the mayor said, hands off, just leave them alone. It's really difficult to say, but you have to say it, Jessica. We've come to a part in our city where we have city employees cleaning human waste on our streets. That is not a Chamber of Commerce moment. It's nothing that we can be proud of. But I also say, what about those families that live in those areas most affected? What about those businesses that are trying to survive in that climate? How is that fair to them that they have to, day in and day out, try to live with these sanctioned tent cities?
How do you balance that? Because they are saying the ruling was that you have to be able to provide them beds. And that has been an issue for our city. We have the Gateway Center, but it hasn't taken off or fulfilled the numbers that we thought we were going to have in beds there yet. What are the alternatives for them?
Mayor Keller has said, from his own mouth, that over 80% of the homeless that are on our streets, they don't want help. I'm a compassionate person. We're going to provide them an opportunity to take advantage of the services that the city provides. If they refuse to take us up on those services, then we will strictly enforce the law. The day that tent cities are taking over our streets and our communities is over. It will not be tolerated. People are being forced to live in this filth, in this lawlessness, because the mayor allows them to do it. If he wanted to clean it up, if he truly believed that those neighborhoods should be free from that lawlessness and filth, he would address it. He doesn't. I call it whack-a-mole. It's like homeless whack-a-mole. They go in the morning and they push them down the street, and they clean up some of the area. And then by nighttime they come back. And it's just a ridiculous game. But you know what it doesn't take into account is those families and those businesses that have to live day in and day out in that filth and then that lawlessness. And that's not fair to them. They pay taxes too.
Switching on to the economy, your plans for jobs and economic growth.
It gets back to recognizing that many of the businesses, let me say this in another way. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. It's what fuels our economy. 2/3 of all jobs in any community are created by small businesses. But look what's happening. As a result of our failure and our administration's ignoring this problem, businesses are closing everywhere. And so we have to do some of the things I talked about already. We have to make our streets safer. We have to make it so that businesses aren't They're not dealing with with tent cities everywhere. So you clean it up.
The Keller administration is saying that the city is facing losing more than $200 million in federal cuts under the Trump administration in grants. Money that goes to everything to 900 children in early childhood programs, funds some of APD's operations, infrastructure projects. Would you raise taxes to make up that money, or what would you cut?
Well, Mayor Keller is obviously engaged in a campaign of fear because he has no record to run on. So let's run against Donald Trump. But the last time I checked, Donald Trump, he's not erecting tent cities and he's not committing crimes in our neighborhood. The mayor is really desperate to talk about anything other than his atrocious record. Look, the president, one of the first things that he said is that I want you to comply and at least assist our ICE agents. That sanctuary city policy, it won't be an issue, Jessica, because we'll end that on day one. We will allow ICE, and we will partner with ICE to check anyone who is arrested for a crime who is in our country illegally. That shouldn't be radical thinking. That's just common sense.
And you're saying, I mean, we know that a lot of this money is tied, you know, the president is saying, yes, hey, we're going to cut if you're a sanctuary city. So it's and it's like half, the Keller administration is estimating around 200, half of that, about 100 million, is because we're a sanctuary city and those funding cuts. How do we make up any of the other half?
Jessica, I don't believe a thing that Mayor Keller tries to tell us about what's going on with Washington. Washington, D.C. is not our problem. Our problem is families and businesses living in fear, trying to work in an environment that is working against them every single day. Mayor Keller can talk about Donald Trump all he wants. It's not the problem. There is not going to be a threat to our federal funding. As I said, we will do the things necessary to make sure that Albuquerque thrives. This is nothing more than cheap campaign politics to try to fear the people into something that isn't real.
Going back to sanctuary cities and what you have said, that we would do away with that in Albuquerque under your leadership and put ICE in detention centers. The other side is saying, including the current chief and the current mayor, that by doing that, it makes our city even more dangerous because you have victims that don't want to speak out if they're here illegally. So let's say, for instance, a woman is facing domestic violence, she's undocumented, she's going to have this fear of going to police. Your comments to the other side of that?
I'd like the mayor to go to the families of people who've been killed by illegal immigrants who are in this city and should have been removed long ago. The issue of people who are victims and witnesses, we've had sanctuary city policies in this city for years, and that was never a problem. We're not talking about victims, we're not talking about witnesses, we're talking about people who commit crimes. But let me also say this, it's not uncommon for illegal immigrants who are committing crimes, for many of those victims to be illegal immigrants themselves. And again, this is simply a distraction to draw attention away from the issue that we have illegal immigrants in this city who are committing murder and should have been deported long ago. And that's not controversial. It's common sense. If you're here illegally and you commit a crime, you should expect that you're going to be removed from our country. And to suggest otherwise is just pandering. And again, it goes back to what you were saying about the federal funding. This is Mayor Keller, desperate to talk about anything else besides his record, and most importantly, do that by injecting fear into the public with areas it's not even an issue.
Would you be for, not as much with criminals, but families that have been here for decades, undocumented?
Our job is not to enforce the immigration laws of our country. That's what our federal government does. However, as a law enforcement community, to simply say to ICE, we're going to give you access to the booking records. And you can look at, we're not going to do their job. We have enough problems of our own, Jessica. But we will give them access to the records of everybody who's arrested so that they can check those records to see if there's somebody here illegally that's been charged with a crime. And let me just leave you with this. We have enough criminals of our own. We have a crime crisis that has required the mayor and the governor of this state to call in the National Guard. That is, I mean, that speaks volumes about the crime crisis that we're in. So if we have a chance to remove criminals from our streets, let's do that. And that shouldn't be controversial. That should be straight up public safety, and that's all it is.
To wrap things up, your favorite memory in Albuquerque?
My favorite memory of Albuquerque?
Favorite memory you've had in Albuquerque?
Oh, that's a great question. I loved being sheriff. I did. It's something I was very, very proud. I'm very proud of my law enforcement service. I love where we live. That's the other, you know, we sometimes in this discussion, as we get into politics, you know, we talk about so many things that are so dark, because for a lot of people, they're losing hope. But you know, Albuquerque's a wonder. It's filled with a lot of memories. We're blessed to be in a city that has spectacular views, a climate that's the envy of the nation, and there are so many things that about Albuquerque that I'm proud of.
Our next candidate was at the top of federal law enforcement here in New Mexico. That includes overseeing the prosecution of police officers in one of the biggest law enforcement scandals in state history, the DWI corruption scheme. Former U.S. Attorney Alex Uballez when we come back.
You're watching the 2025 Albuquerque Mayoral Race Special.
Our next candidate is Alex Uballez. He served as a state prosecutor, federal prosecutor, and is the former U.S. Attorney for New Mexico. In that role, Uballez oversaw the prosecution of officers involved in APD's DWI corruption scheme.
Just to start, everyone in this city is concerned about crime. It's easily the most important topic for most people who live in Albuquerque. What would you do specifically to lower the crime rate in Albuquerque?
Yeah, I think we got a lot of options here, right? And we can do more than doing more of the same, or turning the keys of the city over to the doom and gloom candidates, right? So as the former United States Attorney, you know, I'm the only one who served in law enforcement in the past 15 years. In the past 15 years, as you know, everything has changed, right? 15 years ago, meth was cooked in trailers and fentanyl was a patch. No one had heard of TikTok or Snapchat, and Glock switches hadn't been invented, right? So the learning curve of someone having to come up to date on everything you need to know to run a police department is pretty steep. I think there's a lot of things that we can do to make our streets safer. It begins with thinking a comprehensive approach about public safety, right? We need to think about the actions we take to make the public safer. That is focusing our police department on serious crimes, everything from shootings and murders to drug trafficking, and pulling off the crimes that really are that are caused by mental illness or addiction or poverty, and dealing with those issues as those issues.
Tell me what you would do to change the Albuquerque Police Department, if anything.
There's a couple things, and I know a lot of the discourse around APD is that we need more cops. Look, I mean, when you compare it to other similarly situated cities, maybe we do. But we're going into a budget deficit, we're going into massive federal cuts. I think we've got to learn to use what we got. And any candidate who tells you that we're going to just magically hire 400 more people is not thinking realistic about the budget. What I think we need to do is have more cops on the street. We really need to truly invest in a community policing model and a proactive policing model. What that means is we have less than 50% of our cops on the streets right now. More guys need to be on the streets. They need to be building proactively relationships with the community, and that is people on the streets, business owners. They need to know the beats they walk and work. That means they also need to know, and that part of their job requirement should be, not just responding to calls, but knowing the problem places and the problem relationships, for example, or the problem, problems that are simmering up between groups, and identify those and proactively reach out to intervene. That's a coalition that's bigger than policing, and we need to involve people who are civilians and civilian like violence interrupters before violence escalates, but that needs to be integrated within the police department as well, so that we're sending the right response and that we're stopping things before they happen.
I want to move on to a different topic now, homelessness. Just basically, do you support city-sanctioned homeless camps?
So I think that there are a lot of stopgap solutions to the housing crisis and the homelessness crisis, which are interrelated. City-sanctioned camps are one of them, but they are not a solution to the problem, right? They are a temporary Band-Aid. And so I think we are going to need some temporary Band-Aids going forward if we don't actually focus on solving problems. And what that looks like, right, is having a solution after the night one crisis response. We have shelters, West Side, Gibson. Those are crisis response shelters. Like, you're on the streets, you need a roof tonight, we'll take you there. But the reason people are still backed up in West Side for 5 years is because there's no way out of there. And so if we don't build the way out of there, if we don't build that transitional housing, if we don't have that wraparound supports and treat the medical issues of addiction and mental health as the long-term medical issues that they are, we'll be stuck in stopgap for the rest of our lives. And that is not the city we deserve to live in. Right? So I think there are practical solutions to the things that are in front of us. And what that means is treating medical issues as medical issues. You break your leg, right? They're going to put a cast on it. That's the emergency response. But no one thinks that after that cast you'll be able to run a marathon just because you got the emergency response. We need to think long term.
I want to bring this home to people who live in our community. What do you tell business owners who are sick of the homeless people either camped out on their property or harassing their customers or creating an environment that keeps their customers from coming to their businesses? And what do you say to those customers? What do you say to people who live in that environment and deal with it every day? As mayor, what would you say to those folks? Yeah,
they should be fed up with it. And they should be pointing the finger at the government because they are not responsible for solving these issues. We are. As U.S. Attorney, I've spent my career here in prosecution and criminal justice, right? So 15 years for everything from crimes against children to cartel investigations to the chief federal law enforcement officer for all of New Mexico. In that time, I've seen where we need to focus our law enforcement resources when we're looking at serious crime, like I've extradited cartel leaders, I've charged murderers and shooters, and of course uncovered 30 years of corruption in Albuquerque's police department. Those are times we need law enforcement. But I've also seen the times when the system was not built to deal with issues in it, like poverty, like addiction, like mental health. When our criminal justice system isn't built to do that, we need to look at other alternatives to solve it. And so I feel those small business owners. I know that they should not be bearing the brunt by hiring private security and fixing their windows over and over. Instead, it's the city's job to invest in true solutions. Now, other candidates will tell you the solution is to arrest people. We have tried this. We know not only is it unsafe and immoral, it's very expensive. It doesn't solve the problem. We've heard the term revolving door many times in this city, and that is exactly what we get when you have a candidate that wants to arrest everyone who jaywalks. There's a lot of money spent on a police department that doesn't have a lot of money or time taken away from serious investigations and prosecutions, and time put in a revolving door. They'll put someone in jail for a night, and then re-release them to your storefront tomorrow. And so I think the people of Albuquerque, our storefront, for our small business owners, to our residents, are ready for real, meaningful solutions.
Do you really think, because I hear you saying this, I think, that you can create this sort of drug treatment environment where you actually get people out of addiction, which is a massive part of the homeless problem, and get them off the streets in that way?
Yes.
How do you do that?
It's a medical condition that we have medical solutions for. And we know this nationwide, and we know this here. Actually, our legislature has passed a $1 billion trust fund and investment in what's called the SIM model, sequential intercept. It's based off of a program in Miami that looks at the criminal justice system and says, if we focus resources and create a system where we pull people out of the criminal justice system, we intervene in the beginning, we intervene, when folks are getting arrested, we look at the court systems and we look at lockup, and then we create a reentry system as well. We can reduce homelessness and actually tackle the issues of addiction and mental health by pulling folks out of the system that does not fix them or make them better and into the treatment that will. And so that's a model that's worked in Miami to great success. That's one our legislature believes in. And it's one that we need to start building the infrastructure for here so we can catch money from that $1 billion trust fund.
I want to ask you specifically in terms of homelessness about a really sort of in-your-face experience for people in our city. And this is more of a technical matter. Homeless people on the medians asking for money. Your position. What do we do with these folks?
Yeah, it's incredibly dangerous, right, for everybody. And I think it's a thing, you know, and we've all seen the signs out there, which is like giving a homeless person $1 doesn't help them, right? Investing in the infrastructures in the city side to truly treat it, to create either stability or housing for them and those wraparound services, that is the only meaningful investment here. Right? And so if we actually care about changing what our city looks like, if we actually care about the safety of people on our medians, and if we actually care about our driving safety as we're driving through these roads, we have to invest in real solutions, right? At the end of the day, arresting people, moving people, sweeping streets and throwing away all their things and moving them around town only hides the issue at great cost to the taxpayer. We need to actually solve them.
But I want to be clear here. So I understand you're talking about broader solutions and bigger solutions, but I'm talking about the immediate problem of people on the medians. Would you move to push those people off medians? Or would you, what's your plan for these folks?
Sure. I mean, I think it's a safety issue, right? And so when we think about safety, it's holistic. It's both the driver and the person on the median. We don't want anyone to get hurt. You're absolutely right. But that's, again, sort of like the tent city question, really Band-Aid, right? Like, yeah, we can move them on there, off of there. Yeah, we can do enforcement. Yeah, that's slightly safer for them, but not much. And yeah, maybe that makes us feel better about our drive, but it doesn't solve for the store owner who they're going to go move in front of next, right? This is a thing that pushes people around our city and pushes the problem to specific areas. It doesn't solve it.
Tell me about what you would do in terms of jobs and economic growth for the city of Albuquerque.
Yeah, we need that. So as you know, I'm a father. I'm raising 3 small kids here in Albuquerque. And one of my greatest fears is for them to grow up and to feel like they have to choose somewhere else to find safety or opportunity. I think a lot of families feel that here. What they feel is their children leaving, they feel their friends leaving to go be with their children in different cities because this place doesn't provide either that safety, which I think is the bedrock of it, or their opportunity for them. We need to be thinking deeply about how we build opportunity for our kids and for our community. I'm a huge believer in our small businesses, right? Because I think that more than an economic driver, which they are the manifestation of the dreams of people, the things that they love and want to give to their community. We make it incredibly hard for our small businesses to function here, not just on the criminal justice side, not just in not treating homelessness, but in permitting, right, in building, in support and navigating the bureaucracy of the city governments. We make our small business owners become experts in bureaucracy when they should be experts in bagel making, right? Experts in pizza making, experts in the thing that they love. And the city should be a customer service oriented agency that says, what is your dream? We will help you get there.
We only have just a little bit of time left. I want to move on to the sanctuary city, so-called. Albuquerque right now is a so-called sanctuary city, an immigrant-friendly city. Your position on this idea of saying we are not going to assist the federal government in enforcing immigration laws?
Yeah. So I agree with our immigrant-friendly status as passed by ordinance in the City Council. And I think from a broader moral point of view, I believe that we have a responsibility to take care of our neighbors. As a son of an immigrant myself, I believe immigrants make our community strong. And I think that so many people have moved here for opportunity because they want to be members of this community, because they're proud of it, because they're raising children here, because they want that possibility that Albuquerque offers to pursue those dreams. It's our job to take care of our neighbors, and I think especially in this moment, where what we see from the federal government, and I say this from a nonpartisan lens, the federal government is overreaching. The way in which they are using, and I can say this as the former chief federal law enforcement officer, the way in which they are using federal law enforcement, as we've seen across the nation, violates people's civil rights, immigrants or not. We've seen mistakes, as they've called them after the fact, where they've swept up U.S. citizens. We've seen instances where U.S. citizens have been deported. And so when we know that there are anonymous masked men on our streets and they are taking people without explanation, we have a responsibility to take care of our neighbors and stand up for those civil rights, regardless of what party you're in. You gotta believe that.
What do you say to people in Albuquerque who say, if you are here illegally and you haven't followed the process to come here legally and you commit a crime, or you're suspected of a crime, you should be sent home?
Sure. So as the chief federal law enforcement officer for New Mexico, and as the only one in this race who has ever enforced criminal immigration enforcement, I'll tell you that there's a way to do this. We did it. We redrew the ways in which we were doing enforcement to focus us laser-like on those who are affecting public safety. The requirement we had, I said it many times as I was U.S. attorney, was you got to demonstrate why a person's a threat to our community, and then we will use the tools. Right? Luis Talamantes was a person, was prosecuted by my office, murdered, the mother of a state police officer here in Albuquerque. He was a person we followed to West Texas, where we got him and prosecuted him with a Title 8 offense, 1326, illegal reentry. We didn't have a murder hook, but we used the tool we had to prosecute someone who was dangerous to our community. That's how it's supposed to be used. But if you look at any of the stats that are happening now, those are not the people we're targeting. We're sending our federal law enforcement against the lowest hanging fruits, the people who are easiest to find because they're not hiding because of a crime. These people get swept up in Walmarts, they get swept up at work sites because they are just here to make an honest buck for their family. And so when we are weaponizing federal criminal enforcement against those people, who are we missing?
I want to lighten it now just slightly. Mr. Uballez, tell me, and this is the last question, either something you love about the city of Albuquerque or a memory or an experience that you cherish about the city of Albuquerque.
So there are so many. I met my wife at 19 in LA. As you might know, I'm a California boy. And I think ever since then, I was always destined to end up here. This city has that thing. And I think the most emblematic piece of this, this is a family city, right? This is a city of deep histories and deep communities. My wife belongs to one of those families, the Lopez's and the Oteros. Her mom, my mother-in-law, has been my #1 volunteer on the campaign trail. And the thing about her, it's always been true, but it's been crazy to see on the trail, is she's 1 or 2 questions away from 1 or 2 degrees of separation from literally every person she meets here. Right, the question, where did you go to high school, connects you to a cousin that you've never met by marriage. Right? And I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me at work or in public spaces where we realize that we are in fact one community, that we are in fact all tied and bound together. And I think that's what's so special about this election, this city, right? Is the ties that bind it, the families and the relationships that transcend politics, that transcend, all of the little quabbles that we have, and make this place magical.
All right. Mr. Uballez, we appreciate your time. We thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
She is a Navy veteran and a New Mexico native. She is also the daughter of an immigrant small business owner with big ideas about how to fix the problems that plague Albuquerque. Mei-Ling Armijo when we come back.
Your local election headquarters, KRQE News 13 presents the 2025 Albuquerque Mayoral Race Special.
Our next candidate is a Navy veteran, Mei-Ling Armijo, a New Mexico native who's the daughter of an immigrant small business owner. Armijo has served as the Economic Development Director for Bernalillo County and Deputy County Manager for Sandoval County.
We thank you for being here. Ms. Armijo, let me first start by people in Albuquerque concerned about crime. Probably one of the biggest issues. People don't feel safe. What specific steps would you take as mayor to lower the crime rate?
The first step there needs to be a change in leadership. We need a new police chief. That's the first step. We've got to, whatever the culture is now, it's not working. So we have to have a major shakeup in that department. Once that's in place, we need established initiatives for community policing, task force that focus on property crime, vandalism, homicides, and be real specific on what we're focusing when it comes to crime so that we can have targets and measured outcomes so that the people of Albuquerque can see crime, a real decrease in crime.
You clearly don't support the current police chief. What is it about the culture or the structure that you think is a problem right now at APD? So
I think when it comes to APD itself, I don't know that, well, I do know, they don't let cops be cops. So A lot of what I hear from other APD officers is they're not allowed to arrest for misdemeanors. And so these small crimes, these petty crimes, and turn into bigger crimes. And it's frustrating. It's impacting the morale. And it's impacting you and I because it's an indirect, and in a lot of cases, a direct cost to the community as well.
Is there someone you have in mind for police chief, or
I don't.
What would you be looking for in a police chief?
I would be looking for somebody who has shown definitive experience on turning police departments around, and also has a community policing background, understands those types of initiatives, understands task force, what they need to do. I want a police chief who wants cops to be cops and knows how to recruit and has done that and has shown that in their career.
Okay, I want to move on to homelessness.
Yeah.
Do you support city-sanctioned homeless camps?
I don't support it. I think there should be some safe camping spaces. Like you should be able there, and that we had. I don't know that we in the city should provide that in the city limits, but we should have some camping spaces if that's a requirement of the law. But no, because nobody wants that, in a park nearby or even in a space nearby their house, because you invest in Albuquerque in a home. What does that do to the value of your home or the value or your quality of life? Do you feel safe? Will people feel safe as part of that?
What would you say to the business owners? Because there are business owners and there are customers of businesses who say, I don't want to go to this store because I'm afraid of the homeless out front, or I'm trying to run a business and someone is making a mess in front of my store and scaring off clients. What do you say to those business owners?
We're going to clean that up. That's not going to be okay. That's our job. The city of Albuquerque needs to get back to basics. And the basic thing is that we need to protect and serve. And business owners are the taxpayers and people are the taxpayers. And we need to clean up the city so that they feel safe going to businesses. And this goes back to the indirect and direct cost of homelessness and crime, in that if a business isn't able to make money and do what it needs to do, it hurts the city of Albuquerque as well, because they don't generate the tax base. And it impacts the quality of life of the business and decreases jobs because he's not making any money, so now he can't hire.
All right, this is one of those questions that goes right to sort of quality of life for people in Albuquerque.
Sure.
Homeless people on the medians.
Mm-hmm.
It's a question that's been, that's been a problem, I think, for a long time, and different administrations have looked at it differently. What are your thoughts about homeless people on medians asking for money?
I think it's a safety issue. I don't think they should be there asking for money. There's resources and services, so it's a safety issue. It's a concern. I'm not a fan of it.
Okay, what would you do specifically to change that?
As far as having I would enforce them not to be on the.
So you would work to ban that?
Yeah, I would work to ban it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Tell me about the economy. How do you spur jobs and economic growth? This is something that you've had some experience
with.
Tell us what you think about it.
Well, right now, my concern is because of crime in the city, it's hard to generate job growth. It's hard to bring in new businesses or attract businesses, or even we're at the point where we're trying to just keep businesses alive. And this is the bigger picture that nobody's talking about. For example, the cost of doing business in the city, just to get insurance, property insurance, is gone up 10 times. And in my job, I work with small businesses. I've had a small business reach out to me and say, my insurance went up 10 times. I don't know if I can make my loan payment this month because of that cost. There are insurance companies who will not insure pockets of the city. There are large insurance companies who pulled out of New Mexico completely because of the crime for commercial projects that happen on commercial projects, or even home building. Like they'll go up and steal a whole window set for a new house. So if we don't decrease crime and improve the quality of life and people feel safe here, there is no economic growth, and it's been proven because look at the last 8 years.
So you feel like fundamentally that the strategy in terms of economic development is solving the crime and safety problem?
if you're coming to an area and there is high crime and needles in the streets and homeless people camping in the parks, nobody's going to want to live here. You're not going to be able to attract anybody. And businesses want to come where their workers feel safe and welcomed. And with crime the way it is, we can't, the economy will continue to still stay stagnant, or it'll continue to deteriorate. One or the other. But you won't grow unless we do something about crime and we don't take it seriously.
I want to move on to a different topic, and that is the sanctuary city, so-called status of Albuquerque. Your thoughts?
So they say we're immigrant friendly per the city ordinance. I have nothing against the city ordinance. We will continue to stay immigrant friendly if I'm elected mayor.
There are some people who feel like if you're in this, and I'm going to challenge that, who feel like if you're here and you're here illegally and you're caught committing a crime, that we should work with the federal government.
No, I agree with that point.
To find people like
no,
that.
Absolutely. So what I don't agree with is cops, if you get pulled over and the question is what's your immigration status? That's one thing. But if they pull you over and they find out that you committed a crime, absolutely we need to work with the federal government. And we can constructively work with ICE. We don't have to not work with them. We can do it. I want to be fair at the same time to our immigrant population, because as you know, they're part of our economy. So we can't target them. I'm not going to target immigrants because the federal government wants us to do that. I'm all about working constructively with ICE and saying, hey, we arrested this guy. He's illegal. Have at it. Go do your thing. Let's open the prisons. And if they want to come in and take the illegal immigrants out of there, then that's fine. I don't have an issue with that.
Okay, but that's not, just so we're clear, that's not sort of a sanctuary city policy. If you're saying ICE deserves a seat at the table at MDC where we're bringing people for lockup, that's sort of the opposite of a sanctuary city, where you're saying we want you involved in this process and we want you plucking people as soon as they come in and sending them out of the country. Is that
right? Well, I never said I was a proponent of sanctuary city.
Okay.
I always said immigrant friendly. So we'll be immigrant friendly in the sense that we're going to be a safe city for safe people, regardless of your status. However, we need to constructively work with the federal government. We cannot sacrifice our federal funding or grants because we don't want to work with them or constructively work with them in some form or fashion. We have to find a middle ground. And if the middle ground is turning a criminal over, then let's do it, because that'll make our city safer.
All right, I want to lighten this now. You're a New Mexico native.
Yes.
Tell me, in terms of the city of Albuquerque, either one thing that you love about it or maybe a memory or an experience that you cherish about the city of Albuquerque.
So my favorite memory is with my grandfather, and he would take, well, back in that day there was more water in the river, but we would go fishing down near the Rio Grande, and so I just remember it being really hot and sitting there with him, and we would either play cards or he'd tell me a story or something. And the best part was when we were done, we always went and got ice cream.
All right.
Yeah.
Did you jump in the river?
Yes, at that time there was there was a little bit more water back then, but yes, yeah.
Me and my sister too, back when.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back when we had water in the river.
It would probably get up to like right here to me.
Yeah. Nice and cool. Yeah. All right. Ms. Armijo, I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
When we come back, we'll have everything you need to know about the Albuquerque mayoral election, including early voting and other voting resources.
You're watching the 2025 Albuquerque mayoral race special.
Welcome back to KRQE News 13's Albuquerque mayoral race special.
There are 3 other candidates running to be the city's mayor, and you can hear their answers to the questions about Albuquerque's future in a second hour of this mayoral special. To find both 1-hour specials at any time, just go to krqe.com or our new Kirky Now app. And a 7th candidate you should know, Daniel Chavez, will have his name appear on the ballot, but in late September, Chavez dropped out of the race.
Remember, early voting starts October 7th with Election Day on November 4th. If none of the candidates get 50% of the vote, the top 2 vote getters will face off in a runoff election in December. You can find more voting information at krqe.com.
Thanks for watching this News 13 election special.
And remember, we are your local election headquarters.